All right. Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Colin Campbell. Colin, welcome. So awesome to have you, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I am really looking forward to this conversation because, you and we met through one of our mutual friends, Brian Kurtz. And I'll tell you what, Brian is one of those guys that, well, for one, I've known him for about 25, 26 years now. And he is just one of those guys that holds this special place in my life and in my heart. My gosh, when I first met him, he was really big in the direct response world. He was working with Marty Edelston at Boardroom Reports before Marty passed away and stuff. And then since then, he's just gone on to do a lot of stuff on his own. And 12 years ago, he was the very first introduction that I made. I introduced him and Perry Marshall. And those two guys went on to do such amazing things together. I mean, just 10 months later, they're hosting this big event together where there was, 300, entrepreneurs in attendance. And it was that connection for him and Perry Marshall that first planted the seed and first got me thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if I had a business where I just got to do that all the time, where I just got to facilitate relationships like that, where I just got to be the conduit of trust for the entrepreneurs like Brian, like Perry. And here it is, 12 years later. And for 7 years now, this has been my full-time thing. And I am so grateful for the role that Brian played in that. And so when he invited me to come share with his Titans Accelerator group and stuff, and of course you're part of that group, it was such an honor for me to just come and be able to share with his folks and help him further the relationships and just kind of share some of my own experience and be of service. And you were on that call. And through that process, I don't remember. I think you probably reached out to me, and then we had a conversation. And I'm like, wow, Colin, I just really appreciate who you are and how you show up. I'd love to interview you for the podcast if you're open to it. And here we are. And so this is awesome. So I'm just curious. How did you meet Brian, and how did you end up being one of his Titans Accelerator group members? How did that just come to play?
I think it was through Joe Polish
Okay.
originally. I think it was the I Love Marketing podcast, and it was Marty Edelston. It was an interview with Marty Edelston, and Brian was kind of jockeying, or he was there, kind of setting parameters with Marty, and that
Okay.
was the original exposure. And then he had the book launch of Over Deliver. I bought the
Yep.
book. I loved the book.
Yes.
And at that stage, I just loved Brian. Like when I met him, I knew that he's one of those people who's serious about business and commerce, but he's also very reluctant to put any pressure on people. So there was I love that quality of Brian that is, he's specific and sincere about business, but he maintains relationships over a long period of time and
Yes.
honors that.
Yeah.
Um, I really respect that about him. And so many people, like, it's amazing your story, when I hear people who have been in direct response or the commercial world for, decades, and they talk about relationships that they've had for decades. It's really instructive to me to know that I'll be there at some point. And with, I'm 35 now. I have 12 years experience in direct response copywriting in the business world. But at the beginning, I had no uh, you just don't know what you don't know, and you're
That's
kind
right.
of winging
Yeah.
it. And now I'm getting a sense that, oh, this is what it means to be a part of a community, and these like relationships build over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was the other thing about you. You know, Brian has a lot of speakers at the Titans Accelerator group, which is happening tomorrow at 10:30. We have coffee with Kurtz. And there's a lot of speakers that come through, and I always have the filter of do I absolutely love what they said? And if yes, then I'll reach out and book a call and just get to know the person. And what you were talking about and your philosophy behind relationships really appealed to me, and that was why I reached out. So it's truly an honor to be here and talk about this topic. I love it.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because, I learned long ago, I just had this experience long ago that just kind of had me believing ever since that as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. Everything else stems from that. And that's been my experience for years now, and which that's kind of what led to this podcast, which is what this podcast is all about, is about relationships, and I'll tell you, hosting this podcast for the last 2.5 years has been hands down one of the most rewarding things I've done in my 28 years as an entrepreneur and stuff. I absolutely love doing this, and it has exponentially impacted everything that I was already doing stuff in such an amazing way. Well, okay, so now that we've kind of got some background there, I want to turn it over to you, Colin, so that we can set a little bit of context and let our listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. So let's talk about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you're making in the world through your business and stuff. Let's start there.
Man, that is such a huge question. I think it like in one word, it's messaging.
Okay.
I remember I had this experience when I was in high school and they had this entrepreneurial program after school. And I it appealed to me, like starting a business, being part of the commercial world. I never fit in school, didn't get good grades. I didn't like it. And I always thought like, what's the purpose of this? And then they said, because you got to get a job. Well, why do you need a job? It's because you need money. Why do you need money? Because you need to pay for things. It's like, okay, so if money is the objective, then how do you make money? And entrepreneurship and business made more sense to me than getting a job and needing to go to a place. So it was I went to this entrepreneurial course after school, and then it soon became like I didn't care about the course. It was more about there were some girls in the back, and I wanted to hang out with my friend and talk to the girls. But there was this there was this distinct moment where we so the premise of the thing was that we created a business, and the business in our case was first aid kits of all things. We were like came up with an idea. We're going to sell first aid kits. And then we um they were bickering back and forth. I was not paying attention. I'm in the back with my friend Patrick and we're talking to these girls and we're just hanging out. And uh something was going on and they were talking about the mission statement. And they were like trying to create the mission statement as a committee and like put it up and the words up, and it was a very strenuous exercise.
Okay.
And immediately like I grab a piece of paper and I started writing, and then I just put up my hand and read what I wrote, and everyone just stopped and was like, okay, good, that's it. And I think that was the first acknowledgement that I had a capability that was not something that someone could have taught me, but it was like an innate capability that came easily.
Yeah.
And that validation felt so good. Like, wow, I did something good. And I never really had that in school where I always felt like incompetent and that I was just failing because I got C's and D's and it's like sit down, shut up, pay attention, regurgitate.
Yeah.
So it would be, I went into from there. I'm trying to fast forward to the point where I met this guy, Joel Bauer. At some point, I had a job and I hated the job. It was carpentry. I was a carpentry apprentice, hated the job. And I went to this seminar and I learned that there was this thing called direct response copywriting.
Okay.
And how it came about was he sold a business card, the licensing rights to the creative of a business card. It was insane. So he's at the front of the room and he talks about this business card and he shows a testimonial of a woman who made a bunch of money from using this business card. And then he
Okay.
created a lineup of people who were willing to give him $100 for the business card. And then he created a bidding war. Because he's like the ultimate front of stage closer guy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he's a brilliant human being, but he had a lineup of half the room willing to invest $100 cash in a piece of cardboard. Couldn't have costed 3 cents.
Sure.
And I was in the line. I didn't even have $100. I was just like following the line. I'm in the line. Like, what is this? And he stops and he says, sit down. It was just a demonstration. And he said, understand something. This is direct response marketing. And it was like, what is direct response marketing? Whatever it is, I'm learning it and I'm learning it from Joel.
Yeah.
And for the next 10 years, he just became a genuine mentor, someone that I listened to his audios, I studied his material, I took notes, I implemented horribly. Um, like the copywriting, the branding, the positioning, just like if I showed you some of the sales pages, it's just so cringe. Um, like copperplate font. I don't know if you know what this font is, a copperplate font in like black and red. I saw someone use red for some of the words. So then all of my words need to be like black and red. And it was pretty well incoherent. It was just horrible. Like someone learning copy, but not selling, more like making the focus, like, look at my copy, as opposed to like
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
trying to sell an offer. So that was the initial experience. And through Joel, so he conveyed to the group, because he has multiple books, he's authored multiple books. He conveyed the positioning benefit of having a book and being able to get media appearances, because it's when you have a book, you can use that to get onto podcasts, you can use it to generate leads, you can, and he was selling the idea of a book. And then through his group, he acknowledged my copywriting skills, and he would say like, and if you need copy, go to Colin. And then people were coming to me to like write their books. And that's from 2012 to present. I can't count it. It has to be at least 25 books that I've written on behalf of, and probably closer to 40 books that I've participated in, either in the development of the editing, the restructuring of the headlines, or the launch, like participating in direct response books for lead generation. That's been my main capability. And now that's transforming. I'm realizing that the a book is just a mechanism and it's an extension of positioning and branding. So what I've been fascinated most with lately is like I'm trying to cut out the waste of what isn't the thing and what is. And I think what the thing is sitting down with highly successful entrepreneurs and simply talking to them.
Yes.
Like I'm most useful when we're having a conversation. I'm figuring out who are the people that you love to work with, that pay the most, who are easiest to fulfill for. What does your business look like? And asking the right questions that help them give themselves permission to just cut out the waste, stop wasting time with people that don't appreciate them, to charge appropriately and more for a service that helps the perfect client, and the messaging that helps them do that. Like that's the stuff that really fascinates me. And it
Yeah.
such broad applications. Like the businesses are different, the people are different, but the underlying premise is like, who are you communicating with and what appeals to them, and how do you frame that in a way that they get it?
Yeah.
It's just deeply fascinating.
It is. It is. And that I I have every bit of what you're sharing. Is I have just kind of iterated over the last 7 years in doing what I do, and just like really figured out how. I mean, I don't know if you familiar with Dan Sullivan at all, strategic coach, because he has this thing he calls unique ability, and when you're talking about this natural gift that you had when you discovered it in this class, where you just put this thing together and everybody was like, "Oh, that's it," and you're like, "Wow, look what I just did there." And you've got validation, and that's unique ability is what that is right there. And I have this unique ability. I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing about what they're working on, what's got them jazzed, what challenges they're dealing with, what problems they're dealing with, what opportunities they see. Because I just naturally default to, who do I know that might be able to help with whatever they're working on. And and just really, for the last 7 years, continually stepping into just, I want to get better and better and more effective at using my unique abilities and God-given gifts to just be able to make my biggest impact in this world. And you're right, it is absolutely fascinating, the discovery process. And I turned 59 last month, and I feel at 59 years old, I'm just now really catching my groove, man. I'm just now really starting to figure stuff out where, my biggest impact is definitely in front of me, not behind me,
That feels
and
good.
and I'm totally stoked for it. I love what's going on right now. I also just get totally jazzed thinking about where we're going and what's going to just continue happening, because I'm just really figuring out how to use my gifts and abilities in a really effective way, And it's really exciting figuring this stuff out, man, and just being on that discovery journey. And yeah. So, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, and I know you've already talked about one gentleman. I'm gonna reiterate the question and set us up for the next part of our conversation. So, Colin, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And so I just want to, I'm excited to dig into this with you, Colin.
Dude, that is a chunky. If that question walked into a room, everyone would look at it. Dude, woo! Damn, yes. So, Joe Polish comes to immediate mind. So since I was 15, struggled with alcohol and drug addiction. I
Okay.
was a functional. I could do books or write copy or interact and like deliver, but I was struggling. 2000 at the end of 2022, Joe, I had already been exposed to him for probably like 7 years. I had listened to the I Love Marketing podcast, and Dean, I had got consulting with Dean and gone into his breakthrough blueprint consulting 3-day sessions mastermind, super cool in Toronto. And even during that time I was still using, and I discovered Joe um at the end of 2022, and he was just open and honest and explicit about AA and
Okay.
Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was the thing that, if Joe can do this and Joe is about this and he speaks openly about it, I felt comfortable enough to finally go. And
Okay.
going to AA was one of the most, I mean, it put everything into perspective, and it's completely changed my life. Since
Wow.
at the beginning of 2023, I don't think that, yeah, it's a very weird phenomena, because I have friends right now. I have people that my context, the underlying reason of interacting, and the premise most relationships now, all relationships, but like my friendships are how can I be useful to these people and how can I show support and love? Never thought that way. Prior to 2023, it was always around
Wow.
mutual doing. I think like action. Let's go somewhere. We're doing something either, like on the I won't go too deep into the dark side, but like either we're doing drugs and alcohol or we're doing stuff like playing video
Okay.
games and like going out and causing mischief, whatever that is,
Okay.
partying. And so Joe, because of that, I think because of sobriety and because of AA, I have a life now that I can actually be content with. I just felt so discontented and like misunderstood or like I didn't fit in. And when Joe said that, it kind of put things into perspective that, oh, it's because I have, maybe if you eliminate this huge brake pad, you can like coast at least. So Joe, for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I think everything is now AA is at the center of my life because without that, nothing else works. Um, but on the economic side, Joel Bauer, Dean Jackson, Kevin Rogers, and Brian Kurtz, um, Dean Jackson's capability, Dan Sullivan, Dan and Dean's capability to help put concepts and take a concept and frame it in a way that's almost like a widget. Like, oh, I got that now. I got that little thing that I can put in the tool belt. For instance, Dean talks about the first 90 days versus he used the term portfolio of leads. So when you develop a portfolio of leads, let's say it's 100, there's not within the first 90 days, there's X number of buyers, but you can't really tell your true ROI on a campaign until extending the timeline out to like 2 years.
Mhm.
That distinction was a game changer in terms of understanding the lifetime value of a client or customer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Dan Sullivan's work on The Gap, I'm chronically unsatisfied, man. I've done so many beautiful things in music and projects that I'm proud of. And it's a weird phenomena when it's over, it's like I gotta go to the next thing constantly. And Dan's tools for kind of keeping a checks and balance of like the immediate present and the past and cultivating the morale and
Yeah.
staying sane. Because we can get caught up. The weird thing about commerce is that there are it attracts such interesting people. They're creative people who have ethics, and there are creative people who are unethical. And
Mhm.
um to keep your ethics and your morals and your ability to maintain usefulness. Dean and Dan Sullivan had a massive impact on that. Joel Bauer, or yeah, Joel Bauer. I talked about Joel. Joel was like the sales and marketing tactics and verbal jujitsu to convey messaging. Like
Okay.
his ability to acquire testimonials and then frame those testimonials in a way that builds belief and builds intensifies desire. I would be hard pressed to find anyone else. Maybe like I've not been exposed to every single human being in the world, but like he's really good.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Brian's leadership capability and consistency in the training and development world, like the Titans XL, I think this is my fifth year of maintaining membership with Brian,
Wow.
and that's probably the longest thing that I've maintained like an investment in over time.
Okay.
Um, and it ceases to be boring. It's always interesting. He brought in you, he brought in Joe, he Perry Marshall. He's exposed me to such great thinking and ideas and community. Um, those people have had a massive impact, and I just appreciate them. I
Yeah.
appreciate them very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's really is interesting hearing you talk about these people because every one of them I know. Now I have, well, Joe Polish was my introduction to direct response marketing back in 1996 when I owned a cleaning and restoration company. And so Joe and I have been friends ever since. And of course, Dean Jackson I met through Joe. And most people don't know this, but the squeeze page, I believe, that the terminology that was used to describe it years ago. It was an opt-in page. It was the page that you would send people to. You would make an offer, and in order to get that offer, they had to enter their name and email address and give you their name and email address, and then they got on your mailing list. And Dean was the guy who invented that. Dean invented the squeeze page or the opt-in page. And actually on those pages there was no other option. It was either you go to the page and you give them your name and email to get what was being offered, or you didn't, and you just left the page. There wasn't an option to browse the website or nothing. And so that was and like, man, you look at what's happened since then, since Dean created that years ago, how many companies and businesses have used that tool to build an email list? I mean, massive. And it's just, and it's really, and like, and I was in a room where I saw Joel Bauer do what you were talking about, create a stampede of people wanting what he had to offer. And it's like, it's pure magic to watch that happen.
True.
And he has just such this amazing skill set. It's like, what is going on here? And it's just really powerful to witness people, and just, it's really powerful to witness people who are such world class experts at what they do. They make it look so easy, and we're just like looking at that going, man, how can I create that kind of a result in my life or in my business, and how can I do that in a way that it just aligns with who I am and how I want to show up. And once again, you just kind of reiterate this whole thing, and just really kind of shine a light on the power of relationships. Because look what has happened in your life, and your ability to make an impact through using your God-given gifts and abilities as a result of these relationships that you've had in your life that have been really instrumental and really pivotal at different points in time here and stuff. And so if you look back, so, you mentioned several relationships here, but if you look back at an experience where you personally got to make a really big impact, where you were like going, wow, that was so awesome. And you also know, hands down, that would have never happened if not for your relationship with whoever that you just talked about, any one of these people. What is an example of something like that, Colin?
Bro, dude. Last night, so I am in Montreal and I have a podcast for local musicians, and I play music. Music's my passion. I love it. And I was at an open mic and I met a woman named Sherry Ann from a band called Sister Speak. And I had her on the podcast, and we were talking about folk music and we were joking back and forth. And one of us said at some point, "What the folk?" And it was like, I went immediately to GoDaddy. Like, because like I love music in general, hip hop, jazz, funk, soul, rock and roll. EDM, electronic dance music, and folk music, country. Um, but folk music, the language, the storytelling, the vibe of it, the people who are attracted to it appeals to me. So I was thinking like, I want to host a. I had just saw Snoop Dogg in a festival ground with my
Okay.
friend Josh, who sang. He opened for Snoop Dogg, and it was a cool, crazy experience to see my friend do the thing. And so I want to do that. I want to do that for folk. I could see this, what the folk being like that. So we booked a local venue, K-Day Broom, and I created the poster and the URL whatthefolknow.com and booked Sister Speak, Ben Paquette, and this this woman, Drea Sue for the show. And this was like the initial initial What the Folk installment.
Okay.
And uh for 2 months, it was 2 months ahead, a lead time of 2 months. And 10 days before Drea had a complication with her health, she had to drop out. And dude, I snapped, not snapped, but I was freaking out.
Okay.
I regressed into a 5-year-old. I had a little bit of a tantrum. It hurt my feelings because I had so much like pride wrapped up in this event, and I didn't know what to do, and I was confused and sad and angry. And I reached out to I talked to Sister Speak, and we decided to do 5 spotlights, meaning local musicians that would play almost like an open mic, but 3 songs each as opposed to like a full set, and
Okay.
have featured performance. So we spun the promo to have 5 acts and recreated the poster within 10 days to go. 10 days until showtime, and we did that. And last night it happened, and it was it was so awesome, man. I'm just in the afterglow because I produced the whole event, and it was so hard, dude. It was so hard. So much work went into it. It netted zero. I didn't make any money. All the money, dude, all the money went to the performers and Sister Speak, her band, the payouts. It was netted zero. Maybe I might have made $20. I got to look at the numbers. I may have made $20.
So, just to say, Colin, from my experience, I would call that a huge win right there.
Huge win.
Huge win.
For sure, because what's crazy is Drea. If we had have gone with Drea, there was something from the beginning where I wasn't getting. I don't think the we had it. I don't think it would have netted zero. I think it would. We wouldn't have got the people to come. Those five spotlight presentations. Each of them brought like 3 people because they wanted to have their friends with them because they were important. And why I say this is because, dude, Dan Sullivan, so Joe Polish, I'm sober. So I talked to my sponsor when I freaked out. I talked to my sponsor. Why did I talk to my sponsor? Because Joe Polish said he goes to AA, and I'm like, I'm going to go to AA. So I'm sober. Cool. The strategic campaign and interacting with Sister Speak and doing the initial stages of development, Dean Jackson, Joel Bauer, and Dan Sullivan, the long term, all of those people are creative marketing geniuses, and all of them have influenced how I approach the actual campaign with Sister Speak. The event poster and branding itself, like I wouldn't have learned any of that without the copywriting experience of what the folk is a good term. Let's see if we can get the URL. What the folk wasn't available, so what the folk now, that makes sense because it could also be like a blog, in the folk niche, like a thing. And then Brian Kurtz is the dude. So I snapped on this performer, and it was so I snapped and I sent a vicious text, and I made a mistake because afterwards I was just sitting there like an ape that like threw something, broke something, just like I feel dumb now. And I reached out to her and apologized um to maintain this relationship. And Joe Paul, I feel like there's a sprinkling of Joe Polish on there and a sprinkling of Brian Kurtz, but The people came up. So many people just greatly appreciated the event. And again, it was like a canon moment of like me writing down that those words, like getting that acknowledgement or appreciation for a good thing that helped people. All of those people made an impact on that event, and it happened last night. And I'm sitting in the afterglow glow, just appreciating it. And Dan Sullivan, the gap, like I don't compare my progress in this moment with a future thing. I'm not like lusting to do another one. It was so much work, and I can see this being a brand um that we do more consistently, and I'm allowing the learnings to soak in. So I'll use some Dan Sullivan tools to break down the like impact replay, not the impact filter, but like the one you do post impact, post event breakdown, and I'll do that with and send it to all of the performers. The page, if you go to, it's right now, I don't know, this will probably change, but whatthefolknow.com right now, I changed that page to have the links to all of the performers.
Okay.
So why that was important is because front stage, when I opened up, I can say, if you loved any one of the performers, you can go to this URL and get all of their links. And it was a front stage usefulness thing, but also it establishes a relationship with the performers long term because it's good for them. It was good for them, which is like a rapport and relationship slash positioning benefit. So that was a big word vomit, but all of those people had an impact on that event, and it's crazy, like that acknowledgement of those individuals. I appreciate that, dude. Kevin,
That's
for even thinking
awesome.
about it. It's a good thinking exercise to be like, yeah, you're responsible. I think we tend to, in the world of marketing and positioning, we tend to place emphasis on how great we are. And you're only great because of the people that you hang out with. And and you make dumb mistakes.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. Because
Yeah.
we're human, man. That's how it works, And we have what Dan Sullivan calls these unique abilities, which is this handful of just a couple things, two, three things that we're just really good at, assuming that we have taken the time to figure out what those are, and we have been actively engaged in just learning how to become more and more effective at doing what we do. But pretty much everything else in our life we kind of suck at, and it's not our unique ability, and we shouldn't really be doing it all, but yet I can figure this out. And but it man, that is inspiring what you just shared right there, because for one, there is no hide your passion around that. And when you now go out and talk with other people about the experience that you had with this, I mean, you know what, you're just going to attract more people who want to be a part of that stuff, who they just sense your passion, and they're like, man, Colin is fired up about this. And it's people can just feel that, and they're attracted to that because of how we show up, and we get, I mean, like, I have for years I have known that no matter how successful somebody is, no matter how big of a business they got, no matter how great things look from the outside looking in, there is not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. We all crave more appreciation. And so when we come from this place of just being genuinely appreciative of other people and showing that appreciation and making an intentional, conscious decision that daily I am going to show appreciation for people. And And like, I mean, I just did it this morning with, I interviewed Jack Turk. I interviewed him for the podcast this week, and he honored this guy, Dave D. And I knew Dave, and I'm like, you know what? Let's make tomorrow Dave D Appreciation Day, and we're going to do that. And so I did. I put this post up on my Facebook page, and I tagged him in it, and his response was just so awesome because he was just completely beside himself, and to realize that we were the catalyst for that. Our actions caused that to happen. And it's like, wow, you know what? I want to just cause a lot more of that to happen. And so I'm just going to be shown, and like simple stuff. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at honoring my wife, but like every week, you know, I my sock and underwear drawer in my dresser, it gets depleted because I'm wearing clothes all week long, and somehow magically one day a week I go to open that sock drawer, and all my socks are like right back there, and I'm like, wow, that was magic. How awesome is that? I don't know how that happens, but they're just all back in my sock drawer again. And last night I noticed, like, oh, my sock drawer is full again. And I just went out to the living room. My wife was sitting on the couch, and I'm like, honey, I just was in there. I noticed my socks were all back in my drawer again. And I just wanted to thank you for all that you do, for not just doing the laundry, but my gosh, all that you do for our family. And I regularly do that. And just to be able to honor her. And I can tell you that because I just show genuine appreciation towards my wife and for my kids and all of that kind of stuff, our relationship is so much stronger because of that. And what you just did here, and what just even the way that you were just talking about this project and kind of basking in the afterglow of this, and maybe even thinking about, like, wow, I don't know quite what's next, but you know what, man, that felt so good. That felt so good, and I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that. I want to cause more of that to happen and stuff. And now you just start sharing your vision with other people, and the right people are going to be like, yeah, man, that sounds awesome. And yeah, I want to be a part of that. And before you know it, this thing is growing, and now people are hearing about it, and they're like, man, I want to come experience that too and stuff. And it just happens. It happens organically because of how we show up. And Colin, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's like listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like the way that Colin shows up, man. And I'm really glad you had him on the podcast. How can they find out more about you? I know you mentioned, whatthefolknow.com. In fact, I already went and I pulled it up so I could check it out. And any other websites or resources that you feel led to share with folks who want to get to know you a little more?
Probably the best one is formulamarketer.com.
Okay.
Formulamarketer.com. They're now that I'm thinking about this, I got to put a squeeze page on there. I'll put some sort of contact form. I did the dumbest marketing thing there. It's like I have another site where you could opt in for an actual gift, but I don't know if I'll keep that one, but formulamarketer.com, I'll put contact form. It's Colin at formulamarketer.com if you want to reach out directly. I'll just put my email too.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, any last thing you feel led to share, Colin, before we call it a wrap?
We didn't do this before the call started, but every day when I wake up and before every session, when we're doing a creative session, whether it's music or the commercial world, is how can we be useful?
Yeah.
Today, just God grant me the ability to be useful to someone else today, and help me do that to the best of my ability. I think if you ask that, and that's where you're coming from, you're going to create the best marketing. You're going to create the best marketing because you're going to be doing something that you really are congruent with. And yeah, how can I be useful has been one of the most useful things that I've learned ever.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I be useful? How can I be of service to others? And you're right. Just showing up that way and having conversations coming from that place. I mean, man, that is so empowering. And because so few people get to experience being the beneficiary of that, you know.
Yeah.
And we give them that experience, and they're just like, "Wow, what just happened here, man? I want more of that," you know. And so, yeah, that's powerful. Well, Colin, once again, thank you so
Thank you
much
so much.
for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you, and I'm just totally stoked to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Kevin.